Well, you've made it to the #1 commentary channel on YouTube. Welcome to the stream, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for being here. #1 commentary channel, as always. Thank you so much. We got a lot to talk about. UFC 299, Sean O'Malley versus Marlon Chito Vera as the main event, and then there's some great fights under it as well too. I think I'm double audio, so I had to fix that real quick. Damn, I started the video saying the #1 commentary channel on YouTube, and then I messed that up. But anyways, we'll get there slowly but surely, right? But UFC 299, Sean O'Malley, Chito Vera. I think my prediction might surprise you, but before we even get into that, there was a post made by Full Send that I thought was a little bit interesting, and maybe this is the play that the UFC has that maybe I wasn't aware of before, or maybe it just played out the way that it might have seemed, but not necessarily what they intended. That being that this card almost feels like a rookie versus vets card, right? If I'm not tripping, you got Curtis Blades versus Jalton Almeida. I know my camera's in the way a bit. You have Song Yadong versus Piotr Yan. You have Gilbert Burns versus Jack De La Maddalena. And then you have Benoit Saint Denis versus Dustin Poirier. Now, there are some fights that I'm going to go with the vet, other fights that I'm going to go with the rookie. For lack of better terms, you know what I mean? The younger fighter versus the older fighter, because none of these guys are necessarily rookies, but it might surprise you a bit as far as who we're going with on the main card, on the main event, on the co-main event. But we do have some voicemails before getting to all that. So let's get to that initially, and then we'll get into the predictions that I want to share with you guys. Let me turn something off real quick, and then we'll get right to it. I forgot I had the speakers on, so I had to turn that off real quick. Let's get right to it, guys. Let's get to our first voicemails, 267-545-8096. If you want to share your predictions on today's podcast, and then we'll talk about it back and forth. Here is the first voicemail. Here we go.
People's Champ Chris Bates is here. Let me discuss something. But before I discuss about UFC 299 and Joshua versus Ngannou,
So he is going to get to it. Here we go.
history was made this past Friday, but in Qatar, in the event of ONE FC 166, Anatoly Malikan, I think I pronounced his last name right, became the first ever MMA triple three divisional champion. I wish UFC would have done that with guys like McGregor and Henry Cejudo, but those guys never achieved that. UFC has never done that, not even Bellator, especially not PFL, but wow, ONE FC. I'm not saying ONE FC is way better than UFC, but ONE FC.
Some people already make that argument, though, Chris, which is quite interesting. Some people, especially in this chat, are big fans of ONE FC.
Did do that accomplishment that what both UFC and Bellator did not accomplish. I'm not saying they're on top of the food chain, but that guy, I would like to see that guy, a three-divisional champion, fight guys like John Jones or whoever in the heavyweight division.
Get to the next voicemail. Here we go.
Secondly, actually, I don't even want to talk about that fight of Rosenstruck. I'm not going to lie. I did watch it. I stopped watching it in the first round. Then I heard that Shamil guy who was no longer undefeated quit. I'm like, what the hell? I'm like, bro, that was a boring fight. Boring, worst
Until the knockout in the fourth.
heavyweight main event of 2024. Never again UFC should put Jersey in Rosenstruck. That guy sucks. That guy ain't no Francis Ngannou. We all know what Francis Ngannou did to him 4 years ago. But
he mentioned him too in the post fight when he had an interview with ESPN.
Straight up, let me be clear on something. UFC 299.
Oh, here we go.
Let's see my prediction. Let's start
the people's champ, and what the people want to hear. UFC 299 and what you have to say.
With what's it called? Oh, Song Yadong versus Piotr Yan.
Oh man, I'm so interested to see what you have to say. I honestly have no idea. People are sleeping on that very fight, not on the whole card generally. Some people are already saying that this card is better than UFC 300. But Song Yadong versus Piotr Yan could steal fight of the night. I don't mean to sound too exaggerated in these claims. That could steal it. Michael Venom Page versus Kevin Holland could steal fight of the night. Sean O'Malley versus Chito Vera might not even be an interesting fight in general. If we know how Chito Vera starts, and if Sean O'Malley's just going for the win and can knock out Vera, so it could potentially be Piotr Yan versus Song Yadong. It could potentially be Michael Venom Page versus Kevin Holland.
Nah, I'm not rooting on going for Peter Young on this one. That guy sucked in his last fight, especially against Marab. I'm going for Sung Yadong.
Oh, this might sound a little bit blasphemous. I don't know if he sucked in his last. If you say that Piotr Yan sucked in his last fight against Marab, you almost have to say the same that Jose Aldo sucked against Marab, even though Marab got the win. I think it's because of Marab's style. He's gonna fail 742 takedowns, but he's gonna stop you from doing what you want to do offensively, and that's just the way the fight is gonna go. So I think that's a little bit unfair, to be quite honest, Chris Faith, but he did lose to Sean O'Malley in a close fight as well too, right? So he hasn't had the best as far as recent fights in the UFC in the octagon, and he did lose to Aljamain Sterling, but that was also a split decision. He's probably this could be a bit of a reach, one of the most unluckiest fighters in the UFC as of recent. Now, does that mean he's gonna beat Song Yadong? I'm not saying that as well either, but he's had a tough go thus far in the UFC. Welcome back, my guy. Vacation looked amazing. Thank you so much, Beta Quest. Appreciate you, sir. Man, it was. I'm dying to go back. We need to have a member stream where I talk about my plans on maybe potentially being over there for half the year, if it's possible, if I could make it work somehow. We'll get to that in a second. I hope to talk to you about that a bit more. Let's get back to the UFC 299 claims that Chris is about to make. But Beta, hope you're doing well, man. And I hate you for the second thought videos that you've been putting me on to, and just the changing of mindset or mind frame or even political view that you've been putting me on to. But nonetheless, here we go. UFC 299.
Probably split decision. He may try to knock him out, but I'm gonna go for split decision. Gilbert Burns versus.
Wait, split decision for? Hold on a second.
Peter Young on this one. That guy sucked in his. I'm not rooting on going for Peter Young on this one. That guy sucked in his last fight, especially against Marab. I'm going for Sung Yadong.
There it is.
Probably split decision.
I got Song Yadong winning as well too.
You may try to knock him out, but I'm gonna go for split.
And I hate to say that because Piotr Yan was one of my favorite fighters in the UFC at one point. Remember when he fought Corey Sandhagen after that win? How long ago was that as well too? That was back. Damn, that was back in 2021 in October. So like 3 years ago. It's crazy. Yeah, I mean a little less, like 2.5 years ago, roughly, or something like that. But nonetheless, damn, man, the fall from grace that Piotr Yan has, I guess, taken since then. But again, I think he's had one of the toughest goals in the UFC.
Decision. Gilbert Burns versus Jack Della Mandalania. I got Gilbert Burns.
How is a proletarian supposed to get ahead if he never breaks the chains that hold him? I think Puerto Rico is one of the ways to break the chains, even though they are a territory of the U.S. But it's just things we need to talk about. But I somewhat agree, which scares me, man, because I'm agreeing more and more with you. And what scares me sometimes, even in the fighting department, where I'm starting to agree with you more and more. But nonetheless,
probably split decision. Jack Della Mandalania. I got Gilbert Burns. Probably split decision.
Now that's.
I know who this guy is.
Now, with the JDM versus Gilbert Burns fight, I'll give you my prediction in a bit. But let's just say I agree with one, disagree with the other.
Michael Venom Page. He probably fought in Bellator. I don't see Kevin Holland winning against this guy. I'm going for TKO by MVP, second round.
Wow.
Now the co-main event, I ain't gonna lie.
Wow. I can't wait to tell you what I agree with you and what I don't agree with you on this card specifically, Chris. But thank you for going through each fight on the main card, man. This is exciting. I'm very curious to see how you have the main event as well, too, between Sean O'Malley and Chito Vera.
Dustin Poirier, I took a picture with him a few months ago, but I'm gonna have to go with the French guy. Gotta knock him out clean in the second round.
Wow.
Sean O'Malley.
You didn't break down why you have Benoit beating Dustin Poirier. I wonder, so maybe you could tell me this as well too, Chris. I wonder if it's because of the last fight that Dustin Poirier was in where he got knocked out cold. Is that a reason why you're going with the French guy, as you say, instead of Dustin Poirier? Because let's just say 2-2. 2, I agree with you. 2, I disagree.
Versus Chito Vera, I see Sean O'Malley winning by unanimous decision. I don't see Chito Vera winning. I don't see him winning this fight. That's it.
You have one more voicemail. Let's see if you talk about it a bit.
Oh, one last thing. The boxing fight between Ngannou versus Joshua. It's going to be a hard one, but I'm going to have to go with Francis Ngannou. Knockout, but unanimous decision. Or split decision. Or if he does get a knockout, I'll be surprised. John Jones, I know his dumb son's going to be watching. He's going to be like, yeah, Francis is going to lose. Yeah, because it's funny that a guy like Jones wants to come all the way to Saudi Arabia to see the buddy who he fought all those years ago, Ryan Bader, to get knocked out by Renan Ferreira. I'm not going to lie. Here's another thing about this Ferreira guy. And trust me, he's in his prime. If he were to fight Jones, I'm not talking about Jones in his prime, but Jones right now at the age of 36, who do you think will win that fight? I got a good, easy answer, and that's Ferreira. You see how he knocked out Bader clean in the first round? 21 seconds. Bro, John Jones couldn't do that. John Jones fought Ryan Bader, but he didn't knock him out. He knocked him out in the second round. That's right there before he became the light heavyweight champion. Huh. He did what John Jones should have done a long time ago, knock Bader out clean in the first round. 21 seconds. Can you believe that? Can you believe that? Nobody could believe that. But Jones said, I remember Jones said he wants to fight 3 guys. Aspinall, Miocic, and Ngannou. And Ngannou said, your dreams will fucking fight. Well, guess what, Jones? If he wants to stick around, he needs to not retire if he beats Stipe Miocic. If that fight were to happen. And he better not vacate neither. Otherwise, then he's not the greatest of all time, like how everybody says.
We can talk some John Jones excuse me. We can talk some John Jones in a bit. But let's go through the fights and the ones that you picked and how we differ for UFC 299, which is this weekend. We'll be covering it. I'm glad you brought up Ngannou versus Joshua. That fight is going to happen on Friday. I think about like 5 p.m., 4 p.m. So if we could cover that live, we will try to do so as well too, because that's in Saudi Arabia. If someone could correct me if I'm wrong, you let me know. I might have the timing off or in the Eastern time as compared to the West, but I believe it's Friday at around 5 p.m. So if we get home from working time, that's the one that we'll cover. But let's quickly go through the main card, Petr Yan versus Song Yadong, and work our way up, and that's what we'll be focused on this podcast. And then we also have a podcast tonight with Trey Melton at 7 p.m. Eastern. But the first one, Petr Yan and Song Yadong, I agree with you, Chris. I do agree. I think, listen, Petr Yan is 31 years old. Song Yadong is like 26. Yes, Petr Yan is coming off 3 losses. Granted, it was against the best in the division. Aljamain Sterling, Sean O'Malley. And who was the other one? Aljamain Sterling, Sean O'Malley. I don't want to look it up. I want to see if I go off memory. Sean O'Malley, Aljamain Sterling, and I can't remember right now. What was the other one? And Merab. Yes, Merab, which we talked about it earlier. It's just one of those that he has fought the best and come up short, but it's not like he's getting knocked out cold. It's not like he's losing by wide margins, besides the Merab fight. But it wasn't so much that Merab won that fight by dominating him. He just stopped Petr Yan from getting any offense going. But Petr Yan left there practically unscathed. So he's fighting the best, and that's my worry with my pick with Song Yadong and Petr Yan, because Song Yadong, on the other hand, yes, he's coming off 2 wins. He lost to Corey Sandhagen. In my opinion, he probably learned a lot from that fight as well too, because Corey Sandhagen has improved throughout the years. That was back in September of 2022, and Corey's a dangerous fighter, so for him to almost go the full distance, the only reason that it didn't was because of the bad cut that he suffered over his eye. I do think Song Yadong is heading to the prime, into the prime of his career, and I think he's going to show it against Piotr Jan. And I do think the difference between Piotr Jan beating Sanhagen and not beating Song is I do believe that Song has that power that's going to keep Piotr Jan honest. He's not just going to be able to move forward and walk down Song Yadong, in my honest opinion. I think Song, if anything, is going to get the better of the exchanges. I do think he's going to hurt him here and there in the fight, and it is a 3-round fight, so a very winnable fight for Song Yadong. So I'm going with Song Yadong by decision. I do think he's gonna get the job done. Beta Quest says, you know where I'm at. I'm always down for a discussion. Yeah, we gotta talk about these political ideas or aspirations that I have in the future. Beta, not necessarily political aspirations, but just the way I view life and where we're headed, so to speak. I did get you to switch that Cejudo pick, but hey, you win some, you lose some. And maybe that's a sign that I shouldn't necessarily listen to your picks when it comes to MMA, because that was a fail. I had Marab in the beginning, and then listening to you a bit, and who was it? I think it was Drew as well too that had Henry Cejudo winning, and I did switch my pick, and maybe I should have stuck to my guns in Marab, and I should have known that he was gonna make it a boring fight but win nonetheless. So maybe I should have listened in that sense. But you have been right on other fights as well too. I think you picked Ilya to win, right? Against Volk, or did you pick Volk? I forget, but I know we got that fight right. Best commentating channel on YouTube, MTB Grizzly. Welcome to the stream. How you doing today? And let me know who you got between O'Malley and Chito Vera. So I'm going as far as the first fight of the main card, Piotr Jan versus Song Yadong. I'm going Song Yadong. Let's move up to Gilbert Burns versus Jack Della Maddalena. There has been quite the decent amount of criticism in that last fight for Jack Della Maddalena because it was a split decision. It was close, and some felt, thank you, babe, and some felt that that JDM got gifted a decision. Gilbert Burns, listen, I don't think we could criticize him too much in that last fight against Bilal Muhammad. He was suffering an injury, I think, early in that first round, so he couldn't get much offense going. If anything, I think that has more to say with Bilal being a bum and not being able to get him out of there, even with the hurt and compromised Gilbert Burns. But maybe that's a conversation for another day. Nonetheless, is JDM versus Gilbert Burns. JDM is a solid fighter. I mean, Kevin Holland is a good striker as well too. So for him to go the distance against Kevin Holland in a back and forth striking match, I think, listen, you know what? I think that just goes to show that he's making his way up the ranks. Gilbert Burns is going to be a tough test. You saw the problems that Gilbert gave Hamza Chimaev, for example. Yes, he fell short against Bilal Muhammad, but that was due to an injury. He beat Masvidal Magny. I just think at this point in both of their careers, and it's sad to say, if Gilbert Burns doesn't win this fight, title aspirations are gone. Because at this point in his career, it's just, if he loses to JDM, an up-and-comer, number 11 in the division, I think the Tapology has it, but I believe he's actually a little bit higher. Let me see if I could find it here real quick. No, he is number 11, so Tapology has it right. JDM being number 11, Gilbert Burns being number 4. It almost reminds me of like Sean O'Malley number 12 versus Piotr Jan number 1. It's a big jump for JDM. And he's going for Gilbert Burns. I do think that JDM is going to get the job done. Another 3-round fight where I believe it benefits, quote unquote, the rookie. If you see how Full Send put it as far as like the rookies versus vets. I'm going to go with JDM. I think JDM is going to get the job done. I think he's going to get a decision. I think he's going to be able to keep the distance and just not necessarily pick apart Gilbert Burns, but just land the more significant shots and get the job done. Now we have 3 more fights to talk about, and this is the part where I get excited about this card. You have Kevin Holland versus Michael Venom Page, Dustin Poirier versus BSD, and Sean O'Malley versus Chito Vera. I'm eager to know your guys' picks because I'm going to share mines, and this is where I maybe diverge and people call me crazy, and you guys have the opposing fighter that I'm going to pick, so we'll see. I picked Ilya. I got 2 wrong on that card. It was just a matter of time before the changing of guard, and we called it, man. The Ilya fight, we were right about Ilya. Listen, who beats him in the featherweight division? Not to necessarily diverge too much, but before we get to Kevin Holland versus Michael Venom Page, again, 267-545-8096. If you want to share your predictions on who wins between Sean O'Malley and Chito Vera or any fight on UFC 299. But quickly speaking, guys, on if we could quickly look at the featherweight division as it is currently with Ilia Topuria, so they updated it. They have Ilia there. Is there anybody in the featherweight division right now that you would feel confident picking to beat Ilia Topuria? You have Volkanovski number one. You've seen him make videos and talk about that he's gonna get his title back. Listen, I'm not too optimistic in his claims. He's 35 and up. He lost the title, back-to-back losses, knockout losses. I'm not saying Volkanovski still isn't one of the pound-for-pound best in the UFC. I just think him getting the title back, that ship has sailed. Also, the UFC, I'm scared to call it a grimy business, but is that fair to say the UFC is a grimy business as far as they don't want to see Volkanovski be the champion again? Am I mistaken? Is just like they don't want to see Aljamain Sterling at 135 be the champion again. I think that's fair to say. So I don't think the Volkanovski is going to get the shot anytime soon, even if he deserves it. Leroy in the building says, Money Miller. What's up, Leroy? Welcome to the stream. Feels great to be back, by the way, guys, and talk some fighting. But going back to the topic of Ilia and if anybody right now, you saw Brian Ortega get the win against Yair Rodriguez. Does anybody in the featherweight division that you can pick right now and confidently say, this guy beats Ilia Topuria? Beta to what Beta says. He says, I think he reigns that division for the year. I'd be willing to bet. I don't think anybody right now would be confident. Weirdly enough, you might think this is a disgusting take. The only real threat, even though he lost trying to win the title like 3 times, the only real threat I think in the featherweight division stylistically is freaking Granite Chin Max Holloway. Is that fair to say? Again, I wouldn't pick him to beat Ilia Topuria, but I would say any other fighter that I could think of in the division right now has absolutely no chance. I think Brian Ortega has no chance. I think Yair Rodriguez has no chance. Movsar Evloev, people are starting to call him Remember the Decision. I don't think he stands a chance. Arnold Allen is a solid fighter. He might have a chance as well, too. But I wouldn't be confident in picking him. Calvin Kattar, Josh Emmett. We'll see how Aljamain Sterling does against Calvin Kattar, by the way, too. But the only reason I say Max Holloway has a legit chance, the only reason I feel that way is because Max Holloway, you almost just can't. It's not even that you almost. Until now, 2024, you can't knock Max Holloway out. Max Holloway hasn't lost by knockout ever. Is that safe to say? 0 losses by KO. Yeah, when he loses is by decision. So can I see him potentially win a decision against Ilia? I still think that Ilia will land the more significant shots. Kind of like Max Holloway, Dustin Poirier, where Poirier was landing the more significant shots. I think it's one of those style of fights where Ilia still wins. But if I had a gun to my head and people are asking me who is the most threatening guy for Ilia in the featherweight division, I would have to say Max Holloway right now. Beta says I can see him cracking Max's chin. I could see him touching him and landing on the chin a few times. I don't know if I could see him potentially putting him out. That's the tough part that I have. Where if that's the case, and if Max has immense output, I could see Max Holloway. It almost reminds me of the Corey Sandhagen, Piotr Jan. Yeah, Corey Sandhagen could potentially land more, but Piotr Jan was landing the more significant strikes. I could see that happening between Max Holloway and Topuria. With all that being said, I still think Ilia Topuria wins. I don't see anybody winning right now. And I would even say this could be a little bit of recency bias, but the champion I'm most confident in to hold the belt, let me not get ahead of myself, because I feel like Islam Makhachev is another one of those. But I think it's between 3 guys: Makhachev, Leon Edwards, and Topuria. I think those are the 3 guys in the UFC right now that are going to hold the belt for quite some time. I know people don't like the Leon Edwards take that I have, but I think he's a winner. Curtis Williams in the building. Welcome to the stream. Allen could definitely take Ilya. Allen is crafty enough. Alongside as well too, he has the power to disturb Ilya in a fight. I would still edge it to Ilya. I think he's pretty sound defensively, and I do think he catches. I do think he gets, like, look how he measured up those shots against Volkanovski. If he does that against Allen, I'm a little bit worried for Arnold Allen. But I do think that's another honorable mention as well too. I would say the two names that I would pick is Allen and Max Holloway as having the best chance. Curtis Williams, welcome to the stream, by the way, man. Thank you for being a member and having the gold glove. Appreciate you a ton. I think the belt is coming soon for you. The email champ belt. Honestly, I think almost all top 5 could take him out, but mostly Allen and Max. I agree with you with Allen and Max. I don't feel strongly about Ortega. I don't feel he has a legit chance. Ortega or Yair Rodriguez. I think Ilya lands the big shots. I think he gets him out of there. I think Holloway is the scariest, and then I think after that it'll be Arnold Allen. Beta says Max has the best chance because of his boxing, but I'd be willing to bet Ilya has the power to crack that Coco, says Beta. I agree. It's just, and every chin, whether you like it or not, no matter how much of a big fan you are, every chin has an expiration date. I hate to beat a dead horse, but Tony Ferguson is the best example of, after that fight against Justin Gaethje, he was never the same. Every chin has an expiration date. I think that goes for Max Holloway, and he's been in the UFC for so long that Ilya might be the one to find that expiration date on the chin of Max Holloway. I'm not saying this for sure, but he has a very good chance. Ilya messing up putting down his division though, like what the F? Yeah, he has talked negatively as far as like we need new contenders, exciting ones. There's no one really out there. You're kind of shooting yourself in the foot. And I always give Sean O'Malley praise for this, where like he could have had that same approach against Aljamain Sterling and kind of like down, like, spoken down on his name. I thought he did the best thing he could have done was saying, listen, I'm fighting arguably the greatest bantamweight of all time. So then when he knocks him out, it makes him look good. I do think champions should be a little bit hesitant to downplay their the contenders in their division, because if they do that, then it's like, why are we going to pay for a pay-per-view then if you're saying there's no one that has a chance out there or anyone exciting? He has talked about going up and fighting Sean O'Malley coming up and fighting him, where I guess you could say that's an exciting fight, but it just goes to show that the health of the division might not be necessarily the best at the current moment. What he did to Bryce Mitchell gave me all the confidence I needed to say that Topuria is that guy. I just remember an exchange where they were grappling, where I believe he got an underhook, and I think just got one of the craziest takedowns where it almost seemed like Mitchell had the better position, and even then he got like an underhook, reversed the position on him, slammed him, and I'm like, oh, this guy's a dog. I felt strongly that he was a future as well too. Around that time, when he beat Ryan Hall, when he beat Bryce Mitchell, I was like, all right, this guy's the future. Allen is a great striker and very powerful, but his ground game is not strong enough to put the fear of the mat into Topuria. I agree. It's not enough where he's going to be worried about submissions. He's going to be worried about, really, I think, if anything, he's going to be more worried about the striking. But man, Ilya, just the way that he covers up, kind of reminds me of Piotr Jan as well too, but just a little bit more crafty and more diverse striking style. MTB Grizzly says, interesting. Between Izzy and Volk, do you believe either will ever hold UFC gold again? That's a great question. Grizzly, thank you for the question, because that's what makes the podcast fun, the back and forth. Does Izzy or Volk, will either of them get the title back? Man, I need to have a clip where I just, you know how I do that. These, right? I need to have one that puts out the Jeopardy music as we think about this, because I don't want to get ahead of myself. Izzy, Volk, do either of them get the title back? I would say Israel has a better chance. I would say not only has a better chance to win the title, he has a better chance to get the title shot. I'm not saying Volk doesn't deserve it before people start going, what are you saying? Volk doesn't deserve a shot? He only got knocked out once in his division. I'm not saying that he doesn't deserve it. It's really tough for me to believe that the UFC is going to want to give Volkanovski a shot. But I could see them giving Izzy the shot against Dricus. I will still lean more towards Dricus. Between both, I would have to pick Izzy. But my quick answer right now is that neither of them get the title. Neither of them attain the title. Sounds a little bit crazy, right? Because both were dominant champions. Volkanovski was pound for pound #1 in the world. Izzy has been dominating the division, even lapping it for quite some time. So, good question, but I'm gonna say no, MTB. What would you say? And thank you for having a red glove and being a member of the channel, MTB. Max's chin has got some miles on it. Listen, Toyotas last forever, and Max might be Toyota Yaris right now, but he has like 275, and at one point you think to yourself, this guy has 275K on the dash. It has to go, right? Eventually has to. Beta says Yair Ortega is going to give people a false hope for wrestling Ortega. Yeah, I mean, just because he was able to wrestle Yair, that doesn't mean he's doing. Listen, Ilya wrestling is. I would say Ilya's wrestling is underrated. They talk highly about Volkanovski and how he looked against Makhachev. This might be a little bit far-fetched. I think Ilya might do just as well defending takedowns against Makhachev that Volkanovski was able to do, because Volkanovski prepared for that fight, but he wasn't necessarily known for a grappler before that Makhachev fight. That's what Topuria has done in the past with his grappling. He has looked quite well with his jiu-jitsu and his wrestling. So, I don't know. I wouldn't necessarily be that high on the wrestling of Ortega against Ilya. Ortega looked like an NCAA wrestler in comparison to Yair, but I don't think his wrestling is really all that all that strong when it comes to a more well-rounded grappler, that being Ilya Topuria. I think stylistically, Ilya is just a very tough matchup for Ortega. I give him no chance. Crazy with Ilya could be crazy. What the Ilya could be fighting on. What do you mean, Leroy? I'm sorry. I didn't understand that. I'm sorry. I couldn't decipher that message. If you could break it down for me, Leroy. Beta says, Allen did not look great against Movsar. He fought a close fight, but he exposed his weakness in that fight, and with the Max fight, you have the blueprint in how to outpoint him in a slugfest. Listen, and the Movsar specifically doesn't have that threatening one knockout punch power. Arnold Allen, I would say, has it a little bit more. I just think Ilya does have it. So against either guy, Movsar, Arnold Allen, I think he outpoints him or just knocks both of them out. I think Max Holloway is the toughest fight in the division. I think Ilya can do what Volk couldn't. What do you mean by that? Against Makhachev? What do you mean by that? Topuria came into the UFC with 7 subs. Dude was supposed to be a grappling specialist. Dude has knocked out everyone except for Emmett since he got to the UFC, which is kind of crazy, right? When you listen, that guy, is he the most promising champion in the UFC right now? Is that what you're saying, Beta, right now? Between him, Makhachev, Leon Edwards, Sean O'Malley. I mean, if we have to name the rest of the champions, Pantoja, Dricus, Alex Pereira, John Jones. Is Ilya the most is that too much of a recency bias to say Ilya is the most promising champion in 2024 right now? Because that might very well be the case. And before we continue, I'll circle back to Ilya in a second. But we haven't talked about, which a video will come out after this podcast. I just got to edit it, put it out. So you'll hear my predictions maybe more in depth. But let's talk a little bit. I think he could take Makhachev to deep water. Ow, hold on a second. we might have to pause there. Beta says, I think he could take Makhachev, speaking of Ilya Topuria, into deep waters. Chat. Is Beta tripping? Is Beta tripping in saying that he'll take Makhachev to deep waters? The strike. Again, I hate what I'm about to say because, again, we need to give the whole explanation. So don't jump to conclusions with what I'm about to say. Makhachev has been knocked out before. Now, before people get their panties in a bunch and say, that was back like in 2012. You're right. Absolutely. And it's almost disgusting that I'm having this take. All I'm saying is that that button has been pressed before. He has been hurt. I forgot what other fight he was hurt in after that as well too. Now, Ilya might be a little small for 155, but maybe the same way that Makhachev struggled against Volkanovski, he might struggle against Topuria because he does well against the taller fighters, wrapping around their legs, getting takedowns. He might have a tough time doing that against Ilya at 5'8". That makes it actually a little bit tougher sometimes for the takedowns. I hate that I'm traveling down the path of maybe agreeing with Beta yet again, because maybe that doesn't age well for me. But and I'm just joking, by the way. Beta's a homie. But will Ilya take Makhachev into deep waters if that fight ever were to happen? I think with the boxing that he has fought at 155 before. I forget what fights, right? I mean, Ilya Topuria, lightweight fights. If we could get a number. He currently competes yes, but how many fights? We might have to go to Wikipedia. That might be the easiest because I believe they put the weight. No, they don't. Oh yeah, they do. Featherweight, catchweight at 141. I believe. Damn, I have like 1,000 tabs open. Let's see if we could find this quickly. He's fought at 135 and 145. Maybe he's never fought at 155. I thought he has. Am I tripping? Main card. Featherweight. I could be wrong. Can someone? All I see is featherweight and bantamweight. So maybe that. And how much longer? As crazy as it sounds, how much longer does Makhachev make 150? Oh no, here we go. He fought against Jai Herbert at 155. So Herbert at 155. That was the only one, I think. Yes, that was the only one. He's fought Jai Herbert at 155. Will he take Makhachev into deep waters? I don't know how we arrived at this conversation, but that's what happens on the podcast where we have a good conversation talking about the craziest fights and hypotheticals. The boxing will make it a situation where he potentially does take him to deep waters. I think I have to agree with Beta. I would call, but it sounds like a giant snake is in my word. Oh, it's all good. It's all good. Ilya got the perfect scenario. One quick by KO, took little damage, potentially could have fought again by now. Would it be far-fetched to say we see him at 300? Might sound a little crazy because, they want to do that fight in Spain. 267-545-8096 if you want to call in and share your predictions for UFC 299. What a good conversation that this is. Can Topuria take Makhachev into deep waters? Almost sounds a little bit blasphemous, but I would have to agree. Ilya has the jiu-jitsu to neutralize the wrestling and the rest to make Islam work for it, couple that with power. We saw how Islam's chin looked against Volk. Especially in the I don't know if Ilya has the same gas tank, and I guess that's the $1 million question. But in those last 45 seconds of the first fight between Volkanovski and Makhachev, you saw the fear of God in the eyes of Islam, where I gotta sneeze. And this is the worst feeling in the world, where you feel like you have to sneeze and you're not sure. All right, I guess it went away. If that fight would have went 45 more seconds, I don't know if Makhachev would have survived it. Maybe. What's up, Joe De Jesus? Welcome to the building, to the stream. I don't know why I said welcome to the building. Sound a little bit weird. Joe De Jesus, Sean O'Malley, Chito Vera, who wins? Congrats to Ilya and all, but come on, he's not that guy. Oh, here we go. What makes him not that guy? While we keep discussing that, I've been trying to circle back to Kevin Holland, Michael Venom Page. And again, we can keep talking Ilya. Ilya is such an interesting topic. I will say that. Mushroom coffee for the brain, guys, is good for you. Remind me, because of how this podcast is going, that I'm realizing we do like an hour show, but I feel like the longer the show, the better it gets little by little, right? Where we're almost 40 minutes in, and I'm thinking maybe the next show, next Monday, we go 2 hours. Let's just try it. Let's have like a 2 hour long podcast, get a bunch of voicemails, promote it, maybe even have some debates in the morning. Let's maybe go for 2 hours. Just remember I said that, or an hour and a half, because I try to limit it to an hour. Not that I have to today, but I don't know. Just a food for thought, or just a thought to have in the back of your mind, because I would like to have more call-ins, more time to just take my time. Like, I feel like I'm almost rushing the Ilya topic, but it's a good one. And I've been trying to go back to Kevin Holland, Michael Venom Page, but maybe we just say freak it and just have a good time. Make sure you guys share the video and all that helps the channel immensely. Leroy says, no chance. Joe DeJesus says Sean O'Malley, and that makes me a little bit more confident in Marlon Vera, because Joe DeJesus is historically and consistently wrong with his picks. So that makes me a little bit better. It makes me sad that we didn't get an immediate Wonder Boy versus MVP fight. That could still be in the works in the future. You never know. That was the fight to make, right? It almost is like the Kevin Holland and Wonder Boy fight was almost like that, without it being that, because MVP wasn't in the UFC at the time. Sounded like someone just fell off like the top bunk upstairs. Not that I have a bunk bed upstairs, but anyways, I think the longer form shows is better for content farming and allowing listeners the time to show up. I agree. Like, I'm having a blast just sitting back and talking fighting. So I would like to start earlier, so then I could have more time, and then have more time to edit content and all that stuff. And then next week, with it being the UFC 299 recap and just talking about UFC 300, there's going to be plenty of content to talk about. So maybe we do that for next week. Have like a long show where we sit back and people could just call in and just chill. So I'll keep that in mind, but the content will be coming out nonetheless. Good fighter, but just not my cup of tea. Putting down his division, like, I understand why you would say that's not what he should have done. I agree. He shouldn't have been talking his division down. But he sounded crazy when he was saying, speaking of Ilya, when he was saying, he sounded like Conor talking about Jose Aldo. I'm going to knock him out in the first round. I'm going to dominate him. I'm the future. He sounded crazy, where he was writing almost too big of a check, where we wasn't sure whether he was going to be able to cash it, right? Now that he did, his words came to fruition. And now he's one of the most followed fighters in the UFC, one of the biggest names in the UFC. So I understand what you mean by not your cup of tea. He also has a Spanish market as well, too, arguably on a chokehold. He has big stars in soccer that are following him, that believe in him. So he has a potential to go up in weight as well, too. So I think the future is bright for Ilya Topuria. So we'll see. All right. Let me quickly talk about Kevin Holland, Michael Venom Page. I wish this was a 31-year-old MVP. I wish this was a 32, even 33. MVP is 36 years old. MVP is fighting against Kevin Holland, and I think this is a very good fight for his first fight joining the organization, the promotion. Kevin Holland is the name that you give fighters when you say, you know what, you want to prove yourself, you want to make a name for yourself, fight Kevin Holland. And Kevin Holland is dangerous. That's no disrespect to him. He could lose 2 or 3 fights in a row, and people still want to watch him fight because his style is interesting. He's just one of those guys that you want to see him fight. I don't know how to explain it. Like a Jim Miller, even Tony Ferguson. You don't want to see him fight anymore, but you're gonna watch, right? What are other names that we can bring up? Alex Caceres is another one. You just want to see him fight. He's entertaining. Piotr Yan, you just want to see him fight. Gilbert Burns has been on somewhat of a skid. You want to see him fight. Kevin Holland, the same thing. Great name to give to MVP. You add on to that as well, too, that Kevin Holland is interesting and exciting behind the mic. He says some funny things. He does things. He does. They call him a superhero behind the scenes because he saves people from getting their car robbed and stuff. Then you have MVP, one of the flashiest fighters in the world, right? People might not know him if you just follow the UFC, but if you follow Bellator, remember the thing against Cyborg, the throwing the Pokeball, even in his kickboxing days, he has been very entertaining. the shoulder rolls, the arms held low, to then pop out the jab, just some kicks that he has landed in his career where he has knocked out fighters, and he just looks like he has fun in the octagon. So I think this is a perfect fight. This might steal fight of the night as well too. It's only a 3-round fight. I don't know if that favors Kevin Holland or Michael Venom Page. I would say maybe that favors MVP a little bit. With all that being said, until now, so my picks are Song Yadong, Jack Della Maddalena. I'm going to go Michael Venom Page. I think MVP, Wolf Tickets, Leroy says about Ilya. I think MVP, I think he gets the job done. I think they're going to have the same undisclosed agreement, right? Where that Kevin Holland had against MVP. Remember when Kevin Holland maybe should have took the fight to the ground against Thompson, but he didn't, and it became essentially a striking match? I do think this is going to be it. This is going to be the same. Kevin Holland is rangy for the division as well too, and he has power. And MVP has been knocked out before, but that was once against Douglas Lima. Besides that, it was like a split decision loss, I believe. If I'm not mistaken, let me see. Was it split decision or unanimous? It was a split against Storley. So as far as mixed martial arts, 2 losses. But that Douglas Lima fight, that loss was back in 2019, almost four years ago. So what I wanted to say earlier is like where Max Holloway is like a Toyota with 275,000 miles, has a lot of wear and tear. Even though Michael Venom Page is 36, I do think he's not an old 36. I would say Max Holloway is an old whatever he is. I forget how old Max Holloway age. I would say Max Holloway is an old 32 years old. Does that make sense in what I'm saying? Where I would say MVP is not an old 36. With all that being said, I wouldn't be surprised if he gets a win against Kevin Holland. Again, might sound a little bit blasphemous. I wouldn't be surprised if he gets a win against Kevin Holland, maybe gets one more fight and wins and fights for the title, or they just make MVP versus Leon Edwards in England.
I don't mean no disrespect on Henry, but that's the way. I don't mean no disrespect.
I know that sounds crazy.
You need people. You need people like me so you can point your fingers.
Listen, I wouldn't put it too far past the UFC. With all that being said, I am going to have MVP beating Kevin Holland. So I guess I'm going with the quote-unquote rookies of the card. Song Yadong against Petr Yan, right? More experience in the UFC. Petr Yan, you could say, or more of a veteran, the one that has fought the bigger names. Jack Della Maddalena versus Gilbert Burns. Gilbert Burns, quote-unquote, the veteran. I would have Jack winning. I'm going to have MVP. Now, going to the next fight, Dustin Poirier versus BSD. We'll talk about that in just 1 second. Let's catch up with chat. I hear you about the division talk, but nothing like pissing off a pit of vipers. We may now get some of the best fights in the division. I hope so. Just thought of this, but Aldo didn't fight Conor after KO lost like Volk. That's what he wanted it too. There have been interviews where Jose Aldo has said, I wanted that rematch. I wanted it badly. The UFC didn't want to do it. They're historically known for going with what's the more profitable fight and not the most deserving fight for each fighter. Of course, Jose Aldo deserved that rematch. Did he get knocked out quickly? Or maybe that's a stain against him of why he shouldn't get it? Absolutely. But the UFC is more prioritized, and I'm not saying this to criticize them. It's just the truth. They're worried more about what sells more and what the fans want to see more. And I don't think most fans want to see Volkanovski and Ilya again. They would rather see Ilya versus Holloway or something along those lines. But absolutely right, Leroy. Hit the nail on the head. Beta says, if Thompson loses his next fight, win or lose, he should get the MVP fight after. He deserves it. If MVP wins, man, that's an interesting fight to make. There's some good fights to be made for MVP before he retires. And again, I do think, as crazy as it sounds, he is a young 36 years old. So there's promising fights for him as well too. Wolf Tickets. Nah, this fight is Wolf Tickets. Well, why do you say that? Oh, the MVP and Kevin Holland. Why so? Like Canelo in boxing, exactly. He's what, like 50 something and one or something? Like, yeah, Canelo has been fighting for like forever. So he's an old 33. And he might be scared of that Benavidez fight. Not that I blame him, but Man, we need to have another boxing one soon. Yo says Daniel Berry's sports highlights. What's up, Daniel Berry? Welcome to the stream. It is an man. That could be a good video idea. How would you old versus young 30-year-olds? Like MVP is a young 36-year-old, Max Holloway is an old 32-year-old, and we just have a list of like fighters that are older that still has a shot to potentially win the title, and fighters that are older that have no shot and that their best days are behind them. Damn, that's. Let me write that down real quick because that might be a good one. Old versus young 30-year-old fighter. Yeah, that's a good, like Dustin Poirier might be the best median right there. I think he's still, not that he's gonna win the title, but he's still he might be an old 30-year-old fighter. How old is Dustin Poirier, by the way, too? Damn. Let's is Dustin Poirier an old 35 years old? And this kind of leads to my next fight and my next topic, Dustin Poirier and Benoit. Is Dustin Poirier a old 35 or a young 35? Man, that if that Gaethje knockout would have never happened, I would have said he's a young 35. But we don't know what we're gonna get. I'm still gonna go with a young 35. I do still think he has a granite chin and he just got knocked out. I do believe he's gonna beat Benoit as well too. I do think his striking is quite impressive. It is a 5-round co-main fight. I think it being a 5-round fight benefits him. He's been there before more often than Benoit. I'm going Dustin Poirier for this fight as well, too.
You need people like me. You need people like me so you can point your fingers.
I have Dustin Poirier winning. Now I don't know the general consensus of what you guys have for UFC 299 as far as Dustin Poirier and Benoit. So let me know in the chat. But I have Dustin Poirier winning. I think Dustin Poirier is going to be able to stand in the pocket. He also has significant leg kicks that could also hurt Benoit. Benoit had a beautiful one against Matt Frevola, but Matt Frevola isn't Poirier. Poirier is defensively sound. I think this is a fight where not the rookie, but the veteran wins. If you want to, for lack of better terms in classifying this card, UFC 299, rookies versus vets, it almost feels like. I believe Poirier is defensively sound. Maybe Benoit starts off hot. I'm a little bit worried about the example that just came into my mind. Hear me out. I'm not saying that Benoit is Abus. Remember Abus versus Strickland? I'm not saying he's that, where Abus was so winded afterwards, it was almost laughable of how much of a gas tank he didn't have. I'm not saying Benoit is that. I'm just saying he's going to show signs of fatigue, where I don't see Poirier doing that. I think he conserves his energy well. And the longer the fight goes, the more it benefits Poirier. And I could very well see Benoit landing something big early and knocking out Poirier just the way that Gaethje did. I'm just going to say that I wouldn't bet on it. I would bet Poirier lands the big shots and avoids big shots. And as the fight progresses, he's going to start walking down, just like he did against Max Holloway, landing the more significant shots, win a decision. I'm going decision for Dustin Poirier. Potentially knockout as well, too. I think decision is the way to go. I got Poirier. If it were a 3-rounder, I'd go Benoit. Exactly. That 5-round fight, specifically for this fight, I do think it makes a difference. I truly do believe that. I truly do believe that at 155, Poirier having a decent amount of time off, I'm gonna have to go with the veteran. I'm going with Poirier. Last but not least, the fight that I feel most people are gonna disagree with me on: Sean O'Malley and Marlon Chito Vera. The Ecuadorian 23-8-1 versus the American 17-1, and that blemish on his record is against Marlon Vera, who he's fighting at UFC 299, where he says he's 18-0. He says he's never lost before. He says that was a fluke win, and that he believes that Marlon Vera knows that. Do I agree with him? No. Does that show that maybe O'Malley isn't as durable and I guess you could say even is he fragile? I wouldn't maybe go that far, but I believe he might not have the strongest chin, or he might not be the strongest mentally. I think that's a little bit far of a reach. I'm just saying I think Vera's a little bit more durable. I think if Vera lands some leg kicks to slow maybe Sean O'Malley down, since he's hurt him there before, it could potentially happen again. This card is like the changing of the guard, where 300 more represents the matchups of the future, says Beta. That's a good way of putting it. I like that, Beta. Leroy says, feel like MVP fight will be one of those stalemate fights. Looks great on paper, but not so much live. I could see them both definitely not being so offensively anxious because they're quite aware of each other's power, kind of like Derek Lewis versus Francis Ngannou, where it essentially becomes a stalemate. So I could see where you're coming from, but I think MVP is going to go out there with something to prove, and Kevin Holland is going to want to perform. So I do believe it's going to be entertaining. We'll see, because you could be right. A lot of Holland's fights are like that, though, ain't it, Leroy? Says Beta. Going back to Sean O'Malley, Marlon Vera. Beta, who do you have? Leroy, who do you have? The rest in chat, who do you have? I'm going to go with Marlon Chito Vera. And it sounds weird because am I confident that Vera could win a decision against Sean O'Malley? I'm not. It is a 5-round fight. Does that make me a little bit more confident? Yes. Because Vera is a very slow starter. You saw what he did against Dominic Cruz. If he doesn't land that head kick, I think Cruz was on his way to win a decision. Struggled very badly with Corey Sandhagen, which was a frustrating fight to watch. So with all those factors at play, I can see why most people have Sean O'Malley winning. It's understandable. I would even not disagree. I do think this is the fight where he has to show up, and he will. Beta says, I'm Team Chito. Do I believe that it's 100%? I'm not confident in this one at all. Same. So why is this simply because he's a Hispanic in this? Like, what is it? But I love Chito's story too much to think he'd let a shot at the title be a boring. I can't fathom him having a performance like he did against Corey Sandhagen again. I just can't. If he does that, he's gonna be one of the most disappointing up and comers, or one of the most disappointing contenders for the title. That's how bad it'll be, and I would claim that he is. If he just says, you know what, it just wasn't my night. If he has one of those explanations again, it's going to be depressing. I just can't see him with the journey that he has had with his family, with getting to the title. There's just no way he fumbles this one. Not saying I'm not saying fumbling as far as like losing. I'm saying fumbling as far as not leaving it all out there. And he did that against Corey Sandhagen. He kind of did that against Pedro Munoz as well too. He left it up to the judges. If he does that against Sean O'Malley, then geez, man, it'll remind me of kind of like Rigondeaux in boxing. It'll remind me of, who else does that? It'll remind me of maybe this is a little bit unfair, Jeff Neal against Ian Gary, where I felt like he could have left it a little bit more all out there, of just those contenders that just can't push it to the next gear. Yeah, that story with his daughter is a very touching one, man. I forget. I don't think it was an embedded. It might have been an embedded or an interview. I forget, but the whole story with his daughter and getting the surgery for her and all that, super inspiring. I respect him a ton. But he can't sit on his hands on this fight, man. He has to leave it all out there. The problem with leaving it all out there, in a sense, is O'Malley could make this a boring fight as well, too, and stand on the outside and just kind of make it one of those fights as well, too. I don't know what Aljamain Sterling meant by this as well either, but listen to what he had to say.
I heard that, I'm hearing through the grapevines that he didn't really have a great camp, or a lot of
He's speaking of Chito.
the guys to train with.
Chito.
With Chito, yeah. So,
Oh, wow.
I don't know how true that is. So with that said, I'm
Breaking
leaning
news.
towards O'Malley to get it done. I'm going to say, I don't think he finishes by decision. Maybe split decision. I'm saying split decision. I'm concerned about is I'm hearing through the grapevines that he didn't really have a great camp, or a lot of guys to train with.
Chito.
With Chito, yeah. So
What grapevines? I wish I had a personal relationship with Aljamain to be like, bro, just tell me who it was. I won't tell anyone. Like, who's he hearing this from? that Chito's having a bad camp. He can't afford to have a bad camp at this point. He needs this win badly. I don't know if he fights for the title ever again. Chito's daughter always, yep. Paulo Costa's like that too. I do believe Paulo Costa has some upside if he just freaking lets his hands go. But exactly. You mean he's like that as well too. Like, it's there. You see the potential, and he just won't let his hands go as much as he should. If you could take all of Robert Whittaker's shots, maybe the fatigue thing is a factor, but damn, if he was just pressed on the gas a bit more against Whittaker, I think he would have been able to get that win. I think Chito's been getting too comfortable, not as hungry as he was. Ooh. Damn. Could it be that I'm just not taking into account? Has he made the money? He's settled. If he never fights again, him and his family are set. Could that be a little bit of it? Reminded me of Maidana versus Mayweather. After that first loss against Mayweather, although it was close, Maidana, he got fat. He wasn't hungry anymore. Could that be the same thing with Chito Vera? I don't know why I'm mixing boxing and MMA so much today, but could that be the case? It's a good point. We do have a show tonight with Trey Melton. So that'll be a fun one. Today was a very fun podcast. I appreciate you guys for coming through. But I think at this point is where I sign off because I got a couple things to work on. I got to edit a video. I'm seeing that a lot. I'm seeing that in a lot of these fighters. What fighters? What fighters are you mentioning, Leroy, if you don't mind me asking? But it could be that too, that I just haven't taken serious. There's just no way I see him just letting it go. I do think the commentator money has softened him for sure. Wow. Because he is, damn, I haven't caught a card in Spanish. Real quick, totally off topic, but I bought 2 books in Spanish. I'm already 50 pages in another one, but I read, and you saw the video, or the story on Instagram. I did get to read good book in Spanish, got to read it all the way through, loved it. And bro, the Spanish will get better, bro. Like, I'm reading in Spanish, forcing myself. I got to look up like 9 words per page because I'm like, I don't know what that means. I don't know what that means, like over and over again. But if we want a commentating job, like, the Spanish way might be the route. I don't know if I'm able to do it, but why not try? So I'm just trying to improve the Spanish as well too. So maybe I can sit next to Chito Vera one day. Who knows, right? But I'm also trying to see if I get one of those. For those just to want to know what's going on behind the scenes, real quickly, guys. I'm trying to see if I get no promises yet. I'm trying to see if I get, I guess you could say, chosen to commentate for an organization, for a fight that they have. No promises yet. Might not happen. I guess the odds are maybe like a plus 300 that I get the job. So it's not even very likely, but I'm trying to get a job where I commentate fights live. So we'll see if that happens. I'm going to start reaching out to people more. We'll see if that happens. That's one. I'm trying to get my foot in the door in that. I'm trying to get my foot in the door of interviewing more fighters. I haven't reached out to fighters, but I'm going to start doing that. So that's another thing that I got to press on the gas more as well too. So we'll see if any of those 2 things happen. The reason I bring it up is because you brought up Marlon Chito Vera, and maybe that did soften him up a bit. So we'll see about that. And there was something else. I'm just trying to improve the Spanish. So that's another thing. I'm hoping the chance that Gold changes him. I agree. I'm banking on that more than anything. Just to be quite honest, I'm banking that the shot at Gold, and this is a dream that he's always had, that the shot at Gold makes him really hungry for this fight. And I understand they're only human. True. It's hard to go for a run in the mountains and below, degree weather when you're waking up in silk sheets, right? Butcher that Marvin Hagler quote, but yes. I'm hoping the chance. Yep. Thanks, Miller. See you later. MTV Grizzly, come back at 7 p.m. where we do the live show with Trey Melton. Nonetheless, I'm out of here. #1 commentary channel on YouTube.